The day my grandfather died, I wasn't invited to the family meeting. No one called. No one texted. I found out from Facebook. My older brother had posted a smiling family photo outside Grandpa's house. The caption read, "Family comes together when it matters most." I wasn't in the picture. I stared at my phone for nearly a minute. Then it rang. For one hopeful second, I thought it might be my mother. It wasn't. It was my neighbor. "Olivia, I'm so sorry. Are you okay?" I frowned. Why wouldn't I be? There was a long silence. "You don't know?" My stomach tightened. "Know what?" "They're telling everyone your grandfather removed you from his will." I couldn't breathe. "What?" "They've been saying it all morning. They told everyone Grandpa was disappointed in you." I stood frozen in my apartment. Disappointed? That couldn't be true. 3 days earlier, I had been sitting beside Grandpa's hospital bed. He squeezed my hand and smiled. "You've always been my greatest piece." Those were the last words he ever spoke to me. Within an hour, my phone exploded with messages. Some were sympathetic, others were simply curious. "Is it true? Did Grandpa really cut you out? What happened between you two?" Friends, former co-workers, even distant relatives. Everyone seemed to know the story. Everyone. Except me. I called my mother. She answered on the second ring. "Mom, why is everyone saying Grandpa disinherited me?" She sighed. "Olivia, I didn't want you to hear it like this." "Hear what?" "Your grandfather changed his mind before he passed." I felt the room spinning. "No, he wouldn't." "You weren't there," she replied quietly. "He had a lot of time to think." I closed my eyes. "I visited him every day." She didn't answer. Instead, she said something that hurt even more. "Sometimes people see others differently at the end." Then she hung up. I immediately called my brother. Jason answered with a laugh. "So, you finally heard? What are you talking about?" He sounded almost amused. Grandpa realized who really cared about the family. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I cared about him. Jason ignored me. "Don't make this harder than it already is. The will has been read. Just move on." Before I could reply, he ended the call. That night, I couldn't sleep. Not because of the money, because none of it made sense. For the last 4 years, I had driven Grandpa to nearly every doctor's appointment. I brought him groceries, fixed things around his house, sat with him after chemotherapy, helped him learn how to use video calls so he could speak with old friends. Never once did we discuss inheritance. Never once did I ask for money. Grandpa always said the same thing. If you're kind only because someone is wealthy, you're not kind at all. The following morning, someone knocked on my apartment door. Standing outside was a man in a dark gray suit carrying a leather briefcase. "Ms. Olivia Carter?" "Yes." He handed me a business card. "Michael Hayes, attorney at law." My heart immediately started racing. "I represented your grandfather," he said calmly. "I believe we need to talk." I stepped aside. He entered the apartment, then quietly looked around before speaking. "Has your family contacted you?" "They told everyone Grandpa cut me out." He slowly nodded. "I expected that." "You expected it?" He opened his briefcase, removed a sealed envelope, and carefully placed it on my coffee table. Across the front, in Grandpa's unmistakable handwriting, were 7 words that changed everything. "Give this to Olivia after they lie." I stared at the envelope, unable to speak. Michael looked directly into my eyes. "Your grandfather didn't ask me to contact you after he died." He paused. He asked me to wait until your family told everyone you had been disinherited. I felt a chill run through my entire body. Grandpa had known. He knew they would lie. And somehow, he had prepared for it. What I didn't know yet was that Grandpa had secretly recorded one final message. A recording no one in my family knew existed. One that would decide the future of his $32 million estate. I couldn't take my eyes off the envelope. Grandpa's handwriting covered the front in dark blue ink. Give this to Olivia after they lie. Those 7 words echoed in my mind. Not because they were mysterious, because they were impossible. How could Grandpa have known exactly what my family would do after he was gone? Michael Hayes quietly pushed the envelope toward me. You should open it. My hands trembled as I carefully broke the seal. Inside, there were only 2 things: a handwritten letter and an old brass key attached to a faded leather tag. Stamped into the tag was a single number, 214. I unfolded the letter. The paper smelled faintly of Grandpa's workshop, motor oil, fresh cut wood, coffee. Somehow, it still felt like him. I began reading. My dear Olivia, if you're reading this, then your family has already started telling a story that isn't true. I stopped. My eyes filled with tears. Grandpa had predicted every step. Michael remained silent, giving me time to continue. Please don't interrupt them. Don't defend yourself. Don't argue with anyone. People who choose lies rarely stop because someone corrects them. They stop when the truth becomes impossible to deny. I slowly looked up. He knew. Michael nodded. He knew. I continued reading. For years, I've watched how people behave whenever money enters the conversation. Some became generous. Some became patient. Others became very different people. The next few days will reveal more than the last 20 years ever could. I folded the letter halfway. What happened? Michael sighed quietly. Your grandfather began noticing changes about 5 years ago. What kind of changes? Questions. What questions? He opened his briefcase. Inside were several notebooks, not financial records, personal journals. Harold wrote almost every day, Michael explained. He believed memory could become emotional. So he wrote facts instead. He opened the first journal. The handwriting was unmistakably Grandpa's. One page caught my attention immediately. 4 years earlier, Olivia spent her Saturday repairing my porch. Refused payment. Said family shouldn't send invoices. I smiled through my tears. I had completely forgotten that day. Grandpa hadn't. Another page. 3 years earlier, Jason visited for 14 minutes. Asked if I planned to sell the lake property. Didn't ask about my medical appointment. Another. Robert suggested simplifying the estate. Repeatedly asked where I stored important documents. Another. Linda encouraged everyone to stop arguing. Never once asked why they were arguing. Every page told the same story, not through opinions, through moments, small choices, small conversations, small actions. Michael closed the journal. Harold never judged anyone because of one conversation. He looked for patterns. I nodded slowly. That's why he kept writing. Exactly. I looked at the brass key. What does this open? Michael smiled. I was hoping you'd ask. The truth is, I don't know. I blinked. You don't? No. Harold never told me. He only said. Michael reached into another folder, pulled out a typed instruction sheet, and handed it to me. At the top, it read, Instructions following my death. Step 1. Deliver the letter and key 214 to Olivia. Step 2. Allow Olivia to decide whether she wishes to continue. I frowned. Continue with what? Michael pointed lower on the page. Step 3. If Olivia agrees, arrange the final family meeting within 72 hours. The words final family meeting were underlined twice. What's the final family meeting? Michael answered honestly. I've never attended one. What do you mean? Your grandfather created it. He gave me very specific instructions. But he refused to explain everything. Why? He said, Michael smiled, if I explain it, it won't teach anyone anything. That sounded exactly like Grandpa. My phone buzzed, a message from Jason. Don't embarrass yourself by contesting the will. Another. Grandpa made his decision. Accept it. Then another. The attorney already confirmed everything. I looked up at Michael. You never confirmed anything. I know, he replied calmly. So why would Jason tell people you did? The answer hit me instantly. Because no one would question it. If people believed Grandpa's attorney had confirmed the story, the lie would spread much faster. Exactly as it already had. Michael looked thoughtful. I think it's time you saw something. He removed a small digital recorder from his briefcase. I found this in Harold's desk after he passed. You listened to it? No. He instructed me not to. Why? Because it isn't for me. He handed it over. A label covered the front. Written in Grandpa's handwriting were 5 simple words, play during the meeting only. I stared at it. What's on it? Michael smiled gently. I honestly have no idea. Before I could ask another question, his phone rang. He answered. Michael Hayes. His expression changed immediately. I understand. We're on our way. He ended the call. What happened? The probate court, he replied. Your family just filed paperwork. What paperwork? They're requesting the estate be finalized immediately. I frowned. Can they do that? They can request it. But that's not the interesting part. What is? Michael slowly folded the documents. They stated that every legal heir has already agreed to Grandpa's final will. I stared at him. I never signed anything. I know. He nodded. Which means someone just made a very serious mistake. An hour later, we arrived at the courthouse. As soon as we entered the hallway, I saw my parents, Jason, several relatives, even family friends. The conversation stopped the moment they noticed me. Jason smiled confidently. I thought you understood. There isn't anything left to fight over, I quietly answered. I'm not here to fight. My father laughed. Then why are you here? Before I could respond, Michael stepped forward, holding Grandpa's sealed instruction packet high enough for everyone to see. I believe, he said calmly, Mr. Harold Carter expected this exact moment. Every eye in the hallway turned toward the envelope. Jason's smile disappeared. Because for the first time, he realized Grandpa's plan wasn't over. It was only beginning. The courthouse hallway became unusually quiet. My father crossed his arms. Jason looked confident. My mother refused to meet my eyes. Several relatives whispered among themselves. Everyone seemed convinced the matter had already been decided. Everyone, except Michael Hayes. He calmly held Grandpa's sealed instruction packet against his chest, then looked at Jason. You said the estate has already been settled. Jason shrugged. That's what Grandpa wanted. Michael smiled politely. Interesting. I've represented your grandfather for 36 years. And somehow, this is the first time I've heard that. Jason's confidence slipped for just a second. The courtroom doors opened, A clerk called our family inside. The probate judge was an older woman with a calm expression. She reviewed the documents already on her desk, then looked toward my father. Mr. Carter, your petition states that every legal beneficiary has agreed to the submitted estate plan. Yes, Your Honor, Dad answered confidently. The judge adjusted her glasses. Ms. Olivia Carter, have you signed any agreement? No, I replied. I haven't even seen a will. The courtroom fell silent. The judge slowly placed the paperwork back onto her desk. Mr. Carter, your filing appears to contain an inaccurate statement. Dad looked surprised. There must be some misunderstanding. Before the judge could respond, Michael stood. There isn't. He respectfully handed over Grandpa's instruction packet. Your Honor, my client anticipated today's filing. The judge looked puzzled. Anticipated it? Yes. He prepared written instructions weeks before his passing. She carefully examined the sealed packet. The seal carried Grandpa's signature, Michael's signature, and a notary's stamp. The judge nodded. This appears authentic. She broke the seal. Inside, there was only one page. She silently read it, then paused. A faint smile crossed her face. She looked directly at my father. It seems Mr. Harold Carter knew his family rather well. Dad frowned. What does it say? The judge looked down again, then read aloud. If anyone attempts to settle my estate before attorney Michael Hayes presents my final recording, immediately suspend all probate proceedings until that recording has been heard. Every person in the courtroom became still. Grandpa had predicted the very first legal move. Jason leaned toward Dad. This doesn't change anything. Michael calmly answered. It changes everything. The court cannot finalize an estate while valid instructions remain outstanding. The judge nodded. That's correct. Dad's confidence quickly turned into frustration. This is ridiculous. My father wouldn't create unnecessary delays. Michael quietly replied, he didn't. He created accountability. The judge looked toward Michael. When is this recording scheduled to be played? Michael opened another envelope. Tomorrow morning. At 10 o'clock. Exactly 72 hours after Harold Carter's passing. She nodded. I'll postpone today's hearing. Then she looked around the courtroom. I strongly recommend every beneficiary attend tomorrow's meeting. The court will recognize whatever lawful estate documents are presented there. With one tap of her gavel, the hearing ended. As people began leaving, my aunt quietly approached me. She hugged me tightly. I'm sorry. For what? I asked. I believed them. She looked embarrassed. Jason told everyone Grandpa hadn't spoken to you in months. I couldn't hide my surprise. What? He said you stopped visiting. I felt my chest tighten. I visited Grandpa almost every day. I know that now, she whispered. The hospital volunteer remembered you immediately. One simple lie, repeated enough times, had become accepted as fact. Outside the courthouse, reporters waited near the entrance. Apparently, someone had informed local media that a wealthy businessman's estate had become the subject of a family dispute. Microphones immediately surrounded my father. Mr. Carter, is it true your daughter plans to challenge the will? Dad answered before I could speak. She's having difficulty accepting my father's decision. I couldn't believe it. Another lie. Right in front of cameras. Michael calmly stepped forward. I think that's enough. A reporter turned toward him. Sir? Are you Harold Carter's attorney? I am. Can you confirm Ms. Carter was removed from the estate? Michael answered carefully. No. Can you deny it? I can say, no lawful distribution has been announced, and any statement claiming otherwise is inaccurate. Every reporter immediately began writing. Jason's smile disappeared. The narrative he had carefully built was beginning to collapse. Later that afternoon, Michael drove me to Grandpa's house. The property looked strangely peaceful. Flowers covered the front porch. Cards from friends and neighbors filled the mailbox. Inside, everything remained exactly as Grandpa had left it. His reading glasses still rested beside his favorite chair. A half-finished crossword puzzle lay on the coffee table. It felt as though he might walk through the front door at any moment. Michael walked into Grandpa's study. He stopped in front of an old wooden bookshelf. "Did Harold ever tell you about this?" He gently pressed one of the books. A soft click echoed through the room. Part of the bookshelf slowly swung open. Behind it was a narrow storage space. Inside were several locked boxes, family photo albums, old business ledgers, and a professional video camera, still mounted on a tripod. I looked at Michael in disbelief. "Grandpa recorded videos here?" He nodded slowly. "He began about 6 years ago." "Why?" He told me, "People remember arguments. Recordings remember the truth." As we carefully examined the room, I noticed something unusual. One of the storage boxes had fresh scratch marks near the lock. Someone had recently tried to force it open. Michael noticed them too. He quietly photographed the damage, then looked toward me. "Someone was here. Recently. Looking for something." Before I could answer, we heard a car door slam outside, then hurried footsteps. The front door burst open. Jason rushed inside. He froze the moment he saw the hidden room. His face lost all color. "You found it," he whispered. Michael calmly folded his arms. "No. The better question is, how did you know it was here?" Jason stood completely still. He had never been told about the hidden room. No one had. Yet somehow, he recognized it instantly, and in that single moment, he accidentally revealed that he'd been searching Grandpa's house long before anyone else knew the secret existed. Jason froze in the doorway. For several long seconds, no one moved. No one spoke. His eyes remained fixed on the hidden room behind Grandpa's bookshelf. Michael Hayes quietly broke the silence. "You recognized it." Jason swallowed hard. I don't know what you're talking about." Michael didn't argue. Instead, he asked a simple question. "Then why did you run straight to this room?" Jason looked around desperately, searching for an explanation. Any explanation. "I heard voices," he finally said. "I followed the sound." Michael slowly nodded. "Interesting." He glanced at me. "The hidden room is soundproof." Jason's face went pale. He hadn't known that. But Grandpa had installed it years earlier when confidential business meetings were still held inside the house. His excuse had fallen apart in seconds. My father walked in behind Jason, then Mom. Both stopped when they saw the open bookshelf. "What is this?" Dad asked. Michael answered calmly. "A room your father never mentioned to you." Dad stared at the shelves. "I've lived in this house dozens of times over the years. I never knew this existed." Michael replied, "That was intentional." Inside, the room was surprisingly simple. Metal filing cabinets lined one wall. A large wooden desk sat beneath a single lamp. Several shelves held labeled storage boxes. Each carried a year, every year carefully organized. Nothing looked rushed. Nothing looked random. Grandpa had planned this for a very long time. Michael walked toward the desk. There, sitting neatly in the center, was a leather notebook. Unlike the others, this one wasn't locked. Across the cover, Grandpa had written only 3 words. "Read together first." Michael looked toward everyone. "I think Harold wanted all of you to hear this." Dad reluctantly nodded. "So read it." Michael opened the notebook. The first page contained only a single paragraph. If this room has been discovered before my final meeting, someone became impatient. Jason slowly looked away. Grandpa had predicted even this. Michael turned another page. Wealth doesn't usually destroy families. Impatience does. People stop listening. They stop trusting. Eventually, they begin creating their own version of the truth. I looked at my parents. Neither of them said a word. Then Michael reached the next page. His expression changed. "What is it?" I asked. Instead of answering, he carefully removed a folded blueprint tucked between the pages. It showed Grandpa's house, the workshop, the garage, and something none of us expected. Another room, hidden beneath the workshop. Dad frowned. "That's impossible." Michael quietly pointed to the blueprint. "There. A basement." "I've owned this property for years," Dad insisted. "There isn't a basement." Michael calmly smiled. "You've owned nothing. Your father did. And apparently, there are parts of this property you never knew existed." Grandpa had written another note beneath the blueprint. "The second room contains everything that matters. The first room contains everything people expect. Only one of them holds the truth." Jason suddenly stepped forward. "We should go now." His voice sounded unusually urgent. Dad looked surprised. "Why?" "Because..." Jason hesitated. "Because if there's another room, we should secure it." Michael watched him carefully. "Secure it? From whom?" Jason didn't answer. We walked across the backyard toward Grandpa's workshop. The familiar smell of fresh pine drifted through the open windows. Everything looked exactly as it had the last time I visited. The old workbench, the shelves of neatly labeled jars, the worn leather chair where Grandpa always drank his afternoon coffee. Michael unfolded the blueprint. He measured the floor carefully, then stopped beside Grandpa's oldest woodworking machine. "A table saw?" Dad asked. Michael shook his head. "No. A door." He reached beneath the machine, pressed a small metal latch hidden from view. A heavy mechanical click echoed through the workshop. Slowly, the concrete floor shifted. A narrow staircase appeared beneath it. No one spoke. Grandpa had built an entire hidden archive beneath the workshop, and none of us had known. The air inside was cool, dry, clean. Motion-activated lights slowly illuminated the room. Shelves stretched from floor to ceiling. Every box carried detailed labels, family letters, business history, estate documents, medical records, personal recordings, and finally, one large cabinet marked "Final Recording." Michael walked toward it. The cabinet required the brass key Grandpa had left me. Key 214. I handed it to him. The lock clicked open. Inside was a single black storage case. Alongside it, a sealed envelope addressed to Michael. He opened the envelope first. Inside was a short instruction. "Do not play the recording until every member of my immediate family is present." Dad sighed impatiently. "Fine. We're all here." Michael looked around, then quietly shook his head. "No, we're not." Everyone looked confused. "Who's missing?" I asked. Michael slowly unfolded another sheet of paper. It says, "The meeting cannot begin until one final guest arrives." Dad frowned. "What guest?" Before Michael could answer, a voice came from the workshop above us. "Attorney Hayes?" It was a woman. None of us recognized her voice. A few seconds later, she carefully walked down the hidden staircase. She appeared to be in her early 40s, professional, confident. She carried a locked document case. Dad looked completely confused. "Who are you?" The woman looked directly at Michael, then handed him an identification card. "My name is Rebecca Collins. I'm Harold Carter's independent estate auditor." The room fell silent. She looked around at every member of our family before calmly saying, "Mr. Carter hired me 3 years ago to investigate his own family." Jason's face lost all color, because whatever Grandpa had recorded, it wasn't the only evidence waiting underground. No one said a word. The underground archive suddenly felt much smaller. Rebecca Collins calmly placed her locked document case on the large wooden table. She looked around the room before speaking. "I understand this is unexpected." Dad folded his arms. "Unexpected? My father hired a private investigator to spy on his own family?" Rebecca shook her head. "No. I wasn't hired to spy. I was hired to verify facts." There was a difference, a very important difference. Michael nodded toward the document case. "May we?" Rebecca unlocked it. Inside, everything was perfectly organized. Color-coded folders, bank statements, property records, copies of emails, signed affidavits, even notarized witness statements. Jason stared at the folders. His breathing became noticeably heavier. Rebecca opened the first file. "My work began 3 years ago. The day Harold Carter called my office." She looked toward me. "He had one request." "What was it?" I asked. She smiled sadly. "He said, 'I don't need someone to tell me who my family is. I need someone to tell me what the facts are.'" Dad let out a frustrated sigh. "This is ridiculous." Rebecca remained calm. "Then you'll appreciate facts." She slid the first folder across the table. The cover read, "False statements regarding Olivia Carter." I frowned. "What is this?" Rebecca opened it. "During the last 3 years, at least 22 separate false claims about you were repeated among family members." My stomach tightened. 22? She nodded. "And every one of them was investigated." She read the first entry. Claim: Olivia stopped visiting Harold Carter. Rebecca placed a hospital visitor log on the table. Your name appeared again, and again, and again. 312 visits. Jason had visited 11 times. Dad had visited 14. Mom had visited 19. The numbers spoke louder than anyone could. Rebecca turned another page. Claim: Olivia repeatedly asked Harold Carter for money. She placed Grandpa's bank records beside it. No transfers. No personal loans. No gifts beyond birthday and Christmas presents. The claim was marked, false another page. Claim: Olivia pressured Harold Carter to change his will. Rebecca produced copies of Grandpa's appointment calendar. Every meeting with Michael Hayes. Every estate review. Every legal consultation. I wasn't present at a single one. Again, stamped across the page. False Mom slowly sat down. I believed those stories. Rebecca looked at her kindly. I know. That's why Harold wanted evidence, not arguments. Then Rebecca reached a folder marked Financial Review. Jason immediately spoke. We don't need to go through that. Rebecca looked at him. I believe we do. She opened it. Inside were copies of company expense reports, investment accounts, and credit card records. None belonged to Grandpa. They belonged to Jason. Dad frowned. What does Jason's business account have to do with this? Rebecca answered. Everything. She slid one page across the table. Large payments appeared every month. Luxury vehicles, designer watches, private vacations, high-end restaurants. Dad looked confused. Jason, you couldn't afford this. Jason remained silent. Rebecca continued. He couldn't. At least, not using his salary. She turned another page. Approximately 18 months ago, Mr. Jason Carter informed several banks he expected a substantial inheritance. Dad's eyes widened. You what? He used that expectation to obtain loans. Rebecca placed signed documents on the table. He described the inheritance as guaranteed. Jason whispered, "I thought it was." Rebecca calmly replied, "You presented it as fact." "It wasn't." Grandpa's voice suddenly echoed from a small speaker inside the archive. Not the final recording. Just a short audio message triggered when Rebecca opened the folder. "If you're listening to this, someone has finally opened the financial file." Everyone froze. Grandpa had anticipated this moment too. Money borrowed against an inheritance is still borrowed against hope. Hope is not collateral. The recording ended. Silence returned. Dad slowly turned toward Jason. "You told me those loans were for business expansion." Jason stared at the floor. I thought I'd pay them back. With Grandpa's inheritance." Dad closed his eyes. "You never built a business. You built a plan." Rebecca reached for another folder. This one carried a red label. Private recordings. Michael looked at the clock. "It's almost 10. Rebecca nodded. "Then it's time." She removed a black memory card, handed it to Michael. "This contains Harold's final recording." Michael carefully inserted it into the projector. The screen lit up. But before pressing play, he noticed another sealed envelope taped beneath the monitor. He carefully removed it. Across the front, in Grandpa's familiar handwriting, were the words, "Open after everyone is seated." Michael opened it. Inside was a handwritten seating chart. Everyone had an assigned chair. Even Rebecca. Even Michael. My chair sat directly beside Grandpa's empty chair at the head of the table. Jason's chair was directly opposite mine. Michael looked around. "This wasn't random." Rebecca smiled. "No. Harold planned this room years ago." As everyone slowly took their assigned seats, I noticed something unusual. A small green light illuminated beneath each chair. Michael frowned. "What is that?" Rebecca smiled knowingly. "Pressure sensors." Dad looked confused. "Why would Dad install those?" Rebecca answered softly. "So the recording would only begin after every person was exactly where he wanted them." The final green light appeared beneath Jason's chair. A soft tone echoed through the archive. The projector came to life. The screen faded from black. Grandpa appeared, smiling gently, looking healthier than any of us had seen him in years. He looked directly into the camera, then spoke the sentence none of us will ever forget. "Before we discuss $32 million, let's discuss the price your family was willing to pay to get it." The room became perfectly silent, because everyone understood the real meeting had finally begun. The room became completely silent. No one reached for a phone. No one whispered. Even Jason stopped looking around for a way out. Every eye focused on the screen. Grandpa smiled warmly. Not with anger, not with disappointment, with sadness. "I spent my entire life building a business," he began. "But somewhere along the way, I forgot that families also need maintenance." He paused. "If you ignore a building, it slowly falls apart. The same is true for trust." The camera shifted slightly. Grandpa wasn't sitting in his living room. He was inside his workshop. The familiar wooden walls surrounded him. His old coffee mug rested on the workbench. His favorite pocket watch lay beside it. Everything looked peaceful. "I've watched each of you become adults," he continued. "I've celebrated your successes. I've forgiven your mistakes. But over the last several years, I noticed something changing." He looked directly into the camera. "You stopped asking, 'How are you?' and started asking, 'What's going to happen to your estate?'" No one moved. Grandpa wasn't accusing anyone. He was simply describing what he had experienced. That somehow made it harder to hear. He smiled gently. "Robert." My father's shoulders immediately stiffened. "You've always been a hard worker. I admired that. But somewhere along the way, you confused providing money with providing time. Photographs appeared beside him. Missed birthdays, canceled fishing trips, graduation ceremonies where Dad arrived after everything had ended. Grandpa wasn't trying to embarrass him. He was showing him the moments he never got back. Dad quietly wiped his eyes. Then Grandpa turned toward the camera again. Linda, my mother slowly lowered her head. You have the kindest heart in this family. But kindness without courage sometimes protects the wrong people. Images appeared on the screen. Arguments at family dinners. Mom standing silently beside Dad. Jason mocking me while Mom changed the subject instead of stopping him. Grandpa sighed. You wanted peace. But real peace requires truth. Mom covered her face as tears rolled down her cheeks. The screen faded briefly. Then Grandpa smiled again. Jason. My brother stopped breathing for a moment. You were born with talent. You learned quickly. You worked hard. But one day, you stopped chasing success and started chasing shortcuts. Rebecca quietly slid another folder toward Michael. Inside were loan agreements Jason had signed. Each one listed the expected inheritance as proof of future repayment. Grandpa continued. I warned you. You laughed. I asked you to slow down. You said I was old-fashioned. I asked you to build something. You chose to wait for something. Jason stared at the floor. He couldn't deny any of it. Grandpa reached into his pocket. He removed a folded piece of paper. I want everyone to hear this. He unfolded it carefully. It's a list. A list of every conversation any member of my family had with me about money during the last 5 years. He smiled sadly. Do you know how many conversations Olivia started about my estate? The room remained silent. 0. He held up the page. Not one. Then Grandpa laughed softly. You know what she usually asked instead? He looked down at another note. Grandpa, did you take your medicine? Do you need groceries? Want me to fix the fence before it rains? Should I bring dinner on Sunday? He smiled. She never asked what I planned to leave her. She always asked what she could do for me today. I couldn't stop crying. I hadn't done those things to earn anything. I had done them because he was my grandfather. The video paused for just a moment. Then another camera angle appeared. This one surprised everyone. It showed Grandpa sitting in Michael's law office. The recording date appeared in the corner, 9 months earlier. Michael smiled slightly. I remember that day. Grandpa looked directly at the camera. If you're watching this, I've already heard people claiming Olivia manipulated me. He shook his head. So let's settle that. He reached across the desk, picked up a calendar. This is every legal meeting about my estate. He slowly flipped through the pages. Olivia attended exactly, he smiled. None of them. The calendar closed. Because I never invited her. I didn't want her carrying that burden. Rebecca stood and handed copies of the meeting logs to everyone in the room. Every date matched the recording. Every signature matched Michael's files. Facts, not opinions. Facts. Grandpa leaned closer to the camera. Now, I'd like to talk about one particular afternoon. Jason slowly closed his eyes, almost as if he already knew what was coming. The screen changed again. Security camera footage appeared. The timestamp showed 18 months earlier. Grandpa's study, Jason walking inside, looking around, checking the hallway, then opening desk drawers, searching through file folders, trying cabinet after cabinet. Finally, he reached toward the locked safe hidden behind a painting. The video froze. No one in the room spoke. Dad looked at Jason in disbelief. You told me Grandpa asked you to organize his paperwork. Jason whispered. Grandpa's voice interrupted him. I asked him to bring me tea. I returned 5 minutes later and found him searching for documents instead. The footage continued. Jason quickly closed the drawers after hearing Grandpa return, pretending nothing had happened. The room felt heavier with every passing second. Grandpa sighed. I forgave him. I truly did. But forgiveness is not the same as trust. He folded his hands. That's the day I decided every important conversation would be documented. Rebecca quietly nodded. That was also the day Harold hired me. Everything suddenly made sense. The journals, the visitor logs, the financial review, the independent audit. None of it had been created out of suspicion alone. It had been created because Grandpa wanted evidence instead of assumptions. Then Grandpa smiled once more. If you're wondering whether this recording decides who receives my $32 million, he gently shook his head. No. This recording decides something much more important. He looked directly into the camera. It decides whether each of you is finally willing to tell the truth. The screen faded to black. For a few seconds, no one moved. No one even breathed. Then, a message appeared on the screen. Final estate distribution begins in part 2 of my recording. Michael looked at the remaining files inside the archive. There are 2 memory cards. Rebecca nodded. Harold wanted the family to reflect before hearing the will. Dad whispered. He planned every minute of this. Michael carefully picked up the second memory card. Across the label, in Grandpa's handwriting, were 7 simple words. Play only after everyone has spoken honestly. No one reached for it, because for the first time, the money no longer felt like the biggest issue in the room. The truth did. The room remained silent. No one reached for the second memory card. Grandpa had made one final request. Play only after everyone has spoken honestly. For the first time, no one could hide behind lawyers. No one could hide behind paperwork. No one could hide behind money. The only thing left was the truth. Michael looked around the room. Harold wanted each of you to speak. No interruptions, no arguments, just the truth. He looked at my father first. Robert. Dad slowly stood. His hands were shaking. He stared at the empty chair Grandpa had always used, then quietly said, I failed. No one moved. I spent years believing I was working for my family. But somewhere along the way, I stopped being present. He looked at me. When Jason told me you were asking Grandpa for money, I believed him. I never asked you if it was true. His voice cracked. I trusted rumors more than my own daughter. Tears rolled down his face. I'm sorry. Mom stood next. I always believed keeping the peace made me a good mother. She wiped her eyes. I was wrong. I stayed quiet when I should have defended you. I watched small lies become bigger lies, and every time I stayed silent, I helped them grow. She walked toward me. I don't expect forgiveness today, but I hope one day you'll believe how sorry I am. I quietly hugged her, not because everything had been fixed, but because healing has to begin somewhere. Jason remained seated. His eyes never left the table. Finally, Michael spoke. Jason. For several seconds, nothing happened. Then, he slowly stood. I don't deserve any of this, he whispered. I kept telling myself I was protecting the family business, but I wasn't. I was protecting the future I imagined. He looked toward me. When people started asking about Grandpa's will, I lied. The first lie was small. I told one cousin Grandpa was disappointed in you. When nobody questioned it, I kept going. He closed his eyes. I convinced myself that if everyone believed it, It would somehow become true. The room remained completely silent. I wasn't afraid of losing money. He continued. I was afraid that Grandpa trusted you more than me. He finally looked at the empty chair. And I was right. Rebecca quietly nodded toward Michael. I believe Harold's condition has been met. Michael picked up the second memory card. No one objected. He inserted it into the projector. The screen slowly came to life. Grandpa appeared again. This time, he wasn't smiling. He looked peaceful, almost relieved. If you're watching this, then something wonderful has happened. You finally stopped talking about money, long enough to tell each other the truth. A small smile crossed his face. Now, we can discuss the estate. He unfolded a document. I've been told my estate is worth approximately $32 million. He chuckled softly. People seem much more interested in that number than I ever was. Several people smiled through their tears. That sounded exactly like Grandpa. He continued, Before I explain my decisions, I want everyone to understand something. I never created this estate to test your love. You tested your own love. The moment money entered the conversation, Michael quietly removed the original signed will from the envelope. Rebecca verified every signature, then nodded. It's authentic. The room became still. Grandpa began reading. My personal collections, my workshop, my journals, my pocket watch, and every handwritten letter belonged to Olivia. I covered my mouth. Not because of their value, because those were the things I loved most. Grandpa knew that. He smiled. Olivia, you never asked for these, which is exactly why I know you'll protect them. Then he continued, my grandchildren's education foundation will receive $8 million. Dad looked surprised. Grandpa had quietly established a scholarship fund for future generations, not just our family, employees' children, trade school students, young people who couldn't afford college. It was exactly the kind of thing Grandpa would do. My charitable foundation, hospitals, veterans organizations, and community apprenticeship programs will receive another $9 million. Rebecca smiled. He finalized those donations months ago. Grandpa looked into the camera again. The remaining estate, including investments, commercial property, savings, and personal assets, would be divided equally among my family. Dad looked confused. Equally? Grandpa nodded. Yes. I never believed one mistake should erase an entire life. Jason looked up in disbelief. Then Grandpa continued. There is, however, one condition. Everyone leaned forward. If any member of my family lies, pressures another beneficiary, or files legal action attempting to obtain a greater share, that person's inheritance immediately transfers to the Carter Family Scholarship Foundation. The room became silent. Grandpa had protected the estate without destroying the family. Michael placed another document on the table. I have one final instruction. It was handwritten, short, simple, signed only 2 weeks before Grandpa passed away. Attorney Hayes, if my family leaves this meeting speaking to one another, you have succeeded. If they leave speaking only to their lawyers, I have failed. Michael quietly folded the paper. I promised Harold I'd do everything I could. Jason slowly walked toward me. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then he reached into his pocket. He removed a folded piece of paper. It isn't much, he said quietly, but it's where all of this started. I unfolded it. It was the very first handwritten list Grandpa had ever made. A grocery list. At the bottom, Grandpa had written one extra sentence. Ask Olivia if she can come Sunday. Jason smiled sadly. He asked me to call you. I told him you were busy. You never knew. I felt tears running down my face. So many Sundays. Grandpa thought I hadn't come because I didn't want to. Jason nodded. I stole time from both of you. I'm sorry. For the first time in years, I believed him. 6 months later, the Carter family looked very different. Dad retired earlier than planned. Every Wednesday, he volunteered at Grandpa's scholarship foundation. Mom began organizing community meal programs. She said it reminded her that kindness needed action. Jason sold the luxury car he had purchased with borrowed money. He repaid every loan, then accepted a management position at one of Grandpa's apprenticeship centers. He started over, without shortcuts, exactly as Grandpa had once hoped. As for me, I moved into Grandpa's old house, not because it was valuable, because it felt like home. Every Sunday, our family gathered in the workshop. The arguments were gone, the rumors were gone, the estate was rarely mentioned. Instead, we repaired old furniture, shared homemade meals, read Grandpa's journals together, and laughed at stories we'd almost forgotten. One afternoon, while organizing another shelf, I found one final envelope tucked inside Grandpa's toolbox. Across the front, in his familiar handwriting, were the words, "For the day they finally become a family again." Inside, there was only one sentence. The greatest inheritance was never $32 million. It was giving you one last chance to choose each other. I folded the note carefully, placed it beside Grandpa's old pocket watch, and looked around the workshop. Money had almost destroyed us, but one grandfather, one attorney, and one final recording had reminded us that trust is always worth more than an inheritance. Whenever someone asks me about Grandpa's $32 million estate, I don't tell them how much money I received. I tell them about the recording, because the greatest gift Grandpa left behind wasn't wealth, it was the truth.